Hi, Ghost Keyboard here. Today I am presenting you a dirt cheap mini PC model that I got on AliExpress for just $235. This mini PC model is the Firebat A6 with the AMD Ryzen 7 6800H. A mini PC with this processor specification comes usually at much higher prices like the Geekom 6 at $389, which is a no deal, or the Beelink EQR6 for $359. The Firebat 6 is even cheaper than all the mini PC you can find with the older AMD 5825U. At $235, the Firebat 6 is extremely attractive. Its processor was released in 2022. It's an 8 performance cores and 16-thread CPU, which can reach 4.7 GHz clock speed. The RAM is DDR5 topped at 4800 MHz, and it got the precious 680M internal graphic card, which is making this mini PC the actual cheaper gaming mini PC model by a landslide in the market in 2025. Of course, it's not going to run any AAA game at high setting, but sure, it is able to run almost every games with upscaling and even beat a plus $1,000 latest Intel mini PC at every game. We will see later in this review how well the 680M is priced compared to other more expensive mini PCs in the gaming department. Before moving forward, let me tackle the cons of this mini PC model right now, and then we will talk about the good stuff. So the first con is that there is only a single 16 gigabit RAM module. I would have rather liked seeing two 8 gigabytes modules of 8 gigabytes RAM than a single 16 gigabit RAM stick. So I added an extra 16 gigabit RAM module for this review to get the best out of this iGPU. Whatever is the device you own, I strongly advise everybody to use 2 RAM modules. Next, there is no USB 4 port. Also, the pre-built 16 gigabit RAM is not manufactured by a well-known brand. Actually, it has noticeable lower performances than a RAM from something like Crucial or Kingston. Temperatures are a few degrees higher than the Crucial RAM I have added. The SSD has no heatsink, and there is no extra secondary fan for the RAM and SSD cooling. Anyway, I have monitored the RAM temperature, and the maximum temperature reached was over 50 degrees Celsius, which is fine. So it is not such a big deal, but still, the cooler the RAM is, and the more effective it will be. And the last con is the BIOS, which is very, very limited. There is surprisingly no system configuration mode. By default, the power draw is configured for performance mode at 54 watts, which is surprisingly above manufacturer maximum TDP specification. As you can see on AMD website, the maximum TDP configuration for the 6800H is 45 watts with no mentions of CDP at 65 watts. The Firebat A6 even pushed things further with PL2 power options set at 65 watts. As shown in the graph, there is a brief power spike reaching 65 watts at the moment the application is launched. This PL2 setting is designed to accelerate launch times by delivering a short burst of power, creating a snappier, more responsive user experience right when it matters. Note there is no heat throttling and that the CPU can sustain 54 watts with no drop down. However, 54 watts is above manufacturer TDP limits, and I do not recommend to stress your CPU for too long at this power draw and higher temperature, so stick around because I will show you how to tweak the power setting of this device to safely play endless gaming sessions at lower temperature and lower TDP. Before moving forward in the review, could you please give this video a push with a like, a comment, or subscribe to the channel if you like what you are seeing and learning. Okay, now let's quickly review the idle temperature and the noise level of this mini PC. Single fan built are usually quiet mini PC models, and this model is making no exception here. I had to push the volume while editing the video to hear surrounding noise as original audio footage of CPU-Z was silenced, and the idle temperature is around 40 degrees Celsius, which is good. Now, let's talk about the performances and the overall ranking of this mini PC processor. I made a chart based on Cinebench R24 with the most common CPU found on mini PC models, and we can see that the 6800H CPU of the Firebat A6 is the equivalent of the AMD 6900HX. It's outperforming processors like the Intel's Ultra 125H. 256V or 288V in multi-core test. Also, it has significant better performances than the 6800U chip, which is the low-power version of the 6800H. So we have with this AMD processor a very decent chip in terms of performances. I will now show you in batch all the classic benchmark results of the Firebats. For those of you whom are interested in picking some data for comparison purposes, let's make a quick pause here on Geekbench 6. I added the scores of the GMK Tech M7 and M6, which are both more expensive mini PC models at respectively $350 for the M7 and $300 for the M6. Remember that Firebat A6 is at $235 with the same RAM and storage amount. Here on 3D Mark, we can see that the GMK Tech M7 with the same 680 MI GPU is scoring a 20% higher score in Graphic Bench. We will see later if this better 3D Mark is translated in real-world test with a gaming test comparison with a Firebat A6. Remember that I previously mentioned that the pre-built Firebat RAM was not manufactured from a reputable brand. And RAM does have a big impact on the iGPU performances. Okay, now we are moving over power management. Please stop running your device at high performance mode all the time, and especially on AMD chips while gaming. Follow me here. I am going to show you how to drop your CPU temperature from 80 degrees Celsius to 60 degrees by lowering your CPU clock without FPS loss. I am going to enable Windows Hidden Power option and disable CPU Core Performance Boost Aggressive Default Mode. You need to get into Windows Key Registry and search for Hitchkey Local Machine tab, then System, and then Current Control Set, then Control tab and scroll down to Power tab. Then Power Setting, and last look for a folder name starting with 54. Then search for another folder name starting with B&E. Click on it, then double-click on Attribute and change the value data to 0. Now, Windows Hidden Power option is enabled in Advanced Power Setting, select Processor Performance Boost Mode, and disable Aggressive Setting. On screen, you can see that the temperature dropped from 80 degrees Celsius to low 60 degrees without FPS drop. Voila! Let's talk now about console emulation, but before I want to mention that the USB Type-C port support portable monitor display. Here I have a 4K 15-inch monitor running PS2 emulation with RetroArch and Megabezel Cyberlabs. The Firebat A6 can emulate all retro console emulators with its 680 MI GPU, and even run the hardest shaders on my 4K monitor. Every retro console can be emulated with shaders at 60 FPS. Switch games is also running very well. Even Mario Odyssey, which can be challenging to run at 60 FPS for some system, but here we have a smooth gaming experience. The 680 MI GPU is not the best AMD iGPU, but still it is a very capable graphic processor. It can run some AAA games not always above 60 FPS, but global experience is good enough to call the Firebat A6 a gaming mini PC. Here at Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019 release, we are at low graphic settings and above 60 FPS. Next at Ghost of Tsushima with frame generation enabled, and at low setting the game run above 70 FPS with very decent graphic quality. I did not notice any big FPS drop or lag even during fighting scenes with all the PNG in action. Now at Forza Horizon 5 with FSR2 enabled in low settings, we are again above 60 FPS. Although the pre-built RAM is not belonging to the high-quality RAM standard category, but still it managed to hold the iGPU clock at maximum clock speed at 2,200 MHz, and iGPU percentage utilization is close to 100%. Up next, I am going to show you in a game test that the better RAM quality of the GMK Tech M7 is making a difference in FPS performance. But as for now, in God of War Ragnarok, we are again at low graphic settings with frame generation enabled, and we are not quite at 60 FPS. FPS drop a bit lower while we are in a fighting scene with lots of actions, but remember, we are on a $235 mini PC playing a AAA game. There are lots of older AAA game that you will be able to run at higher graphic settings, like here with Hitman 3 at medium settings. I have enabled VSync to prevent screen tearing, so we have a locked 60 FPS and the game is looking amazing. Cyberpunk is going hard on any iGPUs. Even with my AMD 890 MI GPU, I am not able to lock 60 FPS in the city area, so we are averaging 46 FPS and a little lower while in driving mode. God of War is going as hard as Cyberpunk on iGPUs. In this side-by-side screen comparison with the GMK Tech M7, I wanted to show you that even though both mini PCs have the same internal graphic processor, the better crucial RAM of the GMK Tech M7 is providing a higher FPS. Now in Starfield, we can witness the same advantages for the GMK Tech M7 over the Firebat A6 model. In Wuchang Fallen Feathers, we are comparing the Firebat gaming performances with a $1,000 Intel Mini PC with the Intel Arc 140 Ti GPU. The Intel iGPU is ahead, but it is not that big of an advantage, and the Intel Evo T1 Mini PC cost 4 times the price of the Firebat A6. At Elden Ring Night Rain, the more costly Intel iGPU is still ahead, and I would say that this is normal for a system that costs 4 times more. So to wrap up this review, I will say that the RAM quality of the Firebat A6 is its biggest flaw. If you have some Crucial or Kingston DDR5 RAM brands sitting in a drawer and purchase the Firebat, you should swap the pre-built single 16GB RAM for dual quality RAM. Overall, at $235, the Firebat A6 is super sexy. Please give this video a like. Comments are most welcome. Bye, and see you next time.